Divine revelations about Iran discover the incredible biblical destiny fulfilled in God's plan in the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah. The world bore witness to the unfolding of a divine narrative in ancient Persia. Here, in the resplendent halls of King Ahasuerus, amidst silks shimmering like the stars, Esther, a young Jewish woman, found herself at the heart of a tumultuous plan laid forth by the Almighty. Orphaned at a young age, her life had been shaped by her wise cousin Mordecai, who nurtured her faith and instilled in her the strength of her ancestors. Unbeknownst to the king, hidden beneath her beauty lay the essence of a covenant people, called to a destiny far grander than her humble upbringing. As Esther entered the hallowed courts, the sounds of laughter and jubilant revelry masked the silent cries of her kin beyond the palace walls. The weight of oppression loomed like a dark cloud, and rumors of Haman, the king's cunning advisor, shrouded the Jewish community in despair. Esther adorned herself with jewels, yet they felt more like shackles, binding her to a world of privilege while her people languished in sorrow. Mordecai, draped in sackcloth, approached her one fateful day, his heart heavy with longing for her to understand the gravity of their plight. "Do not think that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews," he implored, his voice steady yet charged. "For if you keep silent at this time, deliverance will arise from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" These words rang through Esther's soul, igniting a flame of courage amidst her fears. The realization of her identity stirred a tempest within her as she wrestled with the stark contrast of her royal position against the dire needs of her people. The opulence of the palace felt ensnaring, the very walls that cradled her existence whispered of betrayal and danger. In the depths of night, Esther sought guidance through fervent prayer, beseeching Yahweh for the strength to heed her calling. The heart of her people echoed within her being, urging her to take a stand. With resolved humility, she organized a banquet, inviting Ahasuerus and the ever-looming threat of Haman. Though her heart raced with trepidation, she held fast to her faith in the divine. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select All Notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the banquet commenced, Esther's heart raced, and the tantalizing aroma of roasted meats filled the air. Each step toward the royal dais seemed laden with destiny, and with every heartbeat, she clung to the promises wrapped in the histories of her forebears. Would she unveil her identity and confront Haman, flipping the script of her existence? With trembling resolve, she stood before the king, her future and that of her people hanging in the balance. Would the heavens intervene at this divine juncture, or would silence swallow the cries of the innocent? The banquet was a prelude to fate unfolding, and Esther was poised at the very edge of history. As Ahasuerus reclined upon his thrones, Esther's gaze did not waver. The opulence around her felt as insubstantial as mist, the very air crackled with divine anticipation. "What is your wish, Queen Esther?" "It shall be given to you, even to the half of my kingdom," he declared, his voice rich with power yet blind to the impending revelation. Esther inhaled deeply, fortifying her trembling spirit. "If it pleases the king," she began, her voice steadying as the weight of her purpose surged within her, "let the king and Haman come today to a banquet that I have prepared for them." The king's eyes sparkled with intrigue, and Haman, unaware of the storm brewing, echoed the king's delight, leading them both to the banquet's embrace. Within the lavish chambers adorned with golden vessels, Esther served with grace, concealing her heartache beneath a smile. As they feasted, the moment of revelation loomed closer, yet she could not muster the strength to divulge her identity nor the threat that loomed over her people. Once more, Ahasuerus inquired, "What is your wish, Queen Esther?" "It shall be fulfilled." With a heart of lioness, she replied, "My wish and my request is this: if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I will prepare for them tomorrow, and I will reveal my request." Haman departed the banquet, buoyed by the honor granted him, yet the seed of ambition threatened to sprout within him. He strutted through the city, basking in the glow of recognition, but his countenance darkened at the sight of Mordecai, who sat unyielding, unmoved by his elevation. Filled with rage, Haman determined that no joy could be complete while Mordecai lived. In the shadows of the night, filled with turmoil, Esther wrestled with her decision. She sought further counsel from the Almighty. In this fragile moment, the gravity of her people, their lineage tracing back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, pressed heavily upon her spirit. "O God," she cried in the solitude of her chambers, "grant me the courage to be the voice of my people. Strengthen me for this purpose which you have ordained." And in her earnest plea, visions of deliverance began to unfurl, recalling the promise of deliverance given long ago, "And I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse," Genesis 12 verse 3. The reverberations of history coursed through her veins, whispering the hopes of her ancestors. The dawn of a new day approached, and in the court of the king, Haman prepared his wicked heart, devising a plot against Mordecai. Yet, unbeknownst to him, the God of Israel was orchestrating events behind the scenes, weaving a tapestry of divine providence. As Esther stood before the king once more, her heart beat rhythmically with hope and trepidation. Fate itself seemed to hold its breath, as the banquet commenced. Esther glanced at Haman, whose fate's rope tightened with each passing moment, and at the king, blind to the conspiracy that brewed beneath his roof. Is this the moment ordained for the unearthing of the truth? She pondered, the air thick with divine purpose. Would she, in a single revelation, turn the tide of history? With the fate of the Jewish people at her fingertips, the time had come for her to speak. The echoes of her ancestors surged within her, and as she held her gaze steady, she whispered a prayer of faith. Yet, in that split moment, the king turned to her and asked, "Now, my queen, what is it that you desire?" In the balance hung not just her life, but the very future of a nation, ready to unfold in the hands of a seemingly unassuming Jewish girl. Would Esther's courage awaken the king's heart, and in response to her plea, would God's sovereign plan for deliverance emerge from the shadows? The moment hung suspended in divine anticipation, poised for revelation. Esther took a breath, her heart pounding like a drum in the stillness of the moment. With all eyes fixed upon her Ahasuerus, curious and expectant, Haman, treacherous and oblivious, she gathered her thoughts, drawing strength from the whispered promises of her God. She began, and her voice trembled momentarily before she steadied it, "I am a Jewess, and my people are facing annihilation. A decree has been set forth that threatens our very existence, and I cannot remain silent." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air, each syllable echoing with the urgency of truth. Ahasuerus, confusion lining his brow, leaned forward. Who has dared to do such a thing? His authority carried a tremor, confusion moving through him like a tempest. "Haman," Esther said, her eyes fierce with divine resolve, "he is the orchestrator of this evil plot. He seeks not only to destroy me but the people of God." Shock coursed through the hall. Haman's face morphed from surprise to fury as he recognized the power of her proclamation. "No, my queen," he stammered, "what you speak is a lie." But Esther would not be swayed. "The truth has come forth from the depths of my heart. In your pride and ambition, Haman, you have placed your trust in a plan that cannot yield life. You seek destruction against the Lord's anointed." The king's fury ignited, for he had bestowed lavish honors upon Haman. "What shall be done to this wicked man?" Ahasuerus demanded, his voice rising in indignation. "Let him meet the end he has intended for the Jews," was Esther's measured reply, her heart aflame with the fierce conviction of divine justice that in that moment, the perfect timing of heaven aligned with the planet's sphere, the realization penetrating Ahasuerus' mind. "Let us not waste a moment," he proclaimed. "Let Haman be hanged upon the gallows he prepared for Mordecai." The tension released, and as Haman was led away, Esther fell to her knees, her heart racing. She sought in that moment not her own vindication but the salvation of her people. "O God, grant courage to those who suffer injustice," she whispered, each word a spoken prayer before the heavens, and in the heavens, God moved. The echoes of his mighty hand could be heard throughout the court of Persia, threading history toward redemption. The decree that once loomed dark over the Jewish people began to shimmer with divine hope. Mordecai, once mired in mourning, now found favor in the eyes of Ahasuerus, who commanded that he be brought before the assembly. "Now is the time to celebrate," the king declared, "for it is written, the righteous will shine like the sun," Matthew 13 verse 43. As the kingdom shifted, Esther realized that her role was far from over. The fate of her people hung delicately in the balance, woven through the very fabric of the empire. It was a web of divine sovereignty, each thread reflecting the promise of God, yet, within Esther's heart lingered an unyielding question: had she merely ushered in a moment of clarity, or was there a greater scheme in the shadows? The orchestration of God's righteous plan was far from complete, and as darkness turned to radiant light, the echo of Esther's heart in prayer would carry forth that in the distance, murmurs of hope began to rise, signifying a turn not only in the hearts of people but in the world, as God prepared to reveal his mighty hand. Would deliverance strike from the unlikeliest of places, weaving together the fates of nations in a tapestry unseen? The story was far from over, divine whispers lingered just out of reach, promising a climactic turning point only to be unveiled in God's appointed time. As the court settled into a tumultuous silence, the echoes of Haman's disgrace reverberated beyond the palace walls, sparking a profound shift in the hearts of the Jewish people throughout the kingdom. The gallows, tall and imposing, now stood as a testament to the folly of wickedness, echoing the warning of Proverbs 11 verse 5, "The righteousness of the blameless keeps his way straight, but the wicked falls by his own wickedness." Esther rose from her knees, emboldened by divine courage. Her mind whirled with thoughts of her people, whose lives teetered precariously on the edge of despair. She approached the throne once more, her heart unwavering. "My lord," she began, "though Haman has been removed, the decree writ against my people remains. We are yet destined for destruction unless we seek remedy in your favor." Ahasuerus leaned back, his expression turning solemn as the gravity of her plea sank in. "What can be done, my queen, to see this matter amended? The law of the Medes and Persians cannot be revoked, but I shall grant you power to act." Esther's eyes sparkled with determination. "Grant me the authority, therefore, to issue a new decree, one that restores hope to my people and ensures their defense against those who would seek their end." A fire ignited within her, fueled by the Spirit of God, for she knew the weight of her responsibility. "Wise is the hand that the Lord guides," Ahasuerus replied, rising from his seat. "You shall have what you ask, and speedily I will summon the scribes. Let it be known throughout the empire that the Jews shall stand against their adversaries." The scribes were gathered, and Esther took her place beside the king, a spirit of unity knitting them together as they penned the new decree. "Let the Jews gather and prepare themselves, for they shall defend their lives. Both men and women shall stand firm with swords drawn, ready to deliver their own," she proclaimed, her voice ringing clear. Soon the news spread like wildfire throughout the land. The hearts of the Jews began to stir with newfound courage, emboldened by the promise that their fate was not sealed by Haman's wicked plans. As in Deuteronomy 20 verse 4, they prepared for battle, knowing that the Lord their God went with them to fight for their cause against their enemies. But as the sun began to set on the day of hope, a darkness loomed, for Haman's allies stirred in the shadows, vowing retribution. They too had heard the decree and their hearts hardened against the Jews. Little did they know that their plot was unwittingly weaving the very fabric of God's deliverance. That in the quiet hours of the night, Esther sought the Lord once more, her heart laid bare before him. "O God, what further plans do you hold for your people? Grant me wisdom to navigate this treachery, for the enemy seeks to ensnare us even in our moment of hope." As she prayed, a vision flickered to life within her mind: a great banquet, a gathering that would unveil deeper truths and shift the tide of history. In the remaining shadows of that night, uncertainty shrouded the destiny of the Jewish people, yet the promise of God echoed loudly in the chambers of Esther's heart, whispering of forthcoming revelation. Would God's mighty hand turn the darkness against itself, or would shadows swallow the light of hope once more? A sudden stillness filled the air, a silence pregnant with suspense, hinting at the unseen works of God drawing near. The next episode awaited them, a divine intervention set to change the course of their salvation, for God was orchestrating something magnificent yet unexplored, waiting to unfurl in his appointed time. Esther awoke the next morning with a heart full of expectation. The vision of the banquet burned vividly in her mind. She felt the weight of her people upon her shoulders and prayed fervently, "O Lord, guide my steps that I may execute your will, for your plans are higher than ours." With each breath, she sensed the heavy presence of God's providence enveloping her, a tangible assurance that he had not forsaken his people. In the days that followed, the cries of the Jews resonated in the streets, their voices rising like incense unto the Lord. They readied themselves for the day appointed for battle, sharpening their swords and fortifying their spirits through prayer and solemn assembly. They recalled the words of Psalm 34 verse 7, "The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and delivers them." And as the appointed day drew nearer, Esther realized that the banquet she envisioned was not simply a gathering to eat and drink, but a divine stage where truth would be unveiled, and her destiny intertwined with the fate of her people. She prepared robes of royal splendor, draping herself in garments adorned with grace, each thread a testament of her love and loyalty to her kin. Then came the day of the banquet, a feast that would be forever inscribed in the annals of Hebrew history. Ahasuerus, pleased by Esther's beauty and courage, sat at the head of his table, flanked by nobles and dignitaries. The hall shimmered with gold and silver, but amidst its glitter, Esther's heart pulsed with the gravity of her purpose. "Queen Esther," Ahasuerus proclaimed, his voice echoing in the opulent chamber, "what is your wish? It shall be given to you, even to half my kingdom." The moment hovered in the air, filled with divine tension, for Esther discerned the right moment had come to voice her plea. She rose, trembling yet resolute, her heart aflame with the love of her people. "If I have found favor in your eyes, O king," she began, her voice steady despite the turmoil within, "and if it pleases your heart, let my life and the life of my people be spared, for we have been sold to be destroyed, to be killed and to be annihilated." Her words hung in the air, powerful and piercing, a heartfelt cry for mercy. Ahasuerus furrowed his brow, disbelief washing over his face. Who is he, and where is he, who has dared to do such a thing? The king was consumed with righteous anger at the thought of his beloved queen and her people imperiled. Esther, emboldened by the Spirit of the Lord, replied, "The adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman." With that declaration, the tables turned, and a wave of realization sparked throughout the hall. Gasps erupted among the attendees, for they too recognized the heinous intentions of Haman. The king's eyes blazed like fire, his fury igniting against the architect of this treachery. In that moment of divine revelation, God's hand was unveiled, and the purpose for which Esther was placed in the palace now flourished. For as it is written in Jeremiah 29 verse 11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." As Haman stood condemned, his initial triumph turned to despair. Little did he know the full weight of God's sovereign plan unfolding before him, nor the prayers of a faithful queen that would alter the course of history. Esther's faith and obedience were about to yield a deliverance monumental in scope, yet the shadows of vengeance still lingered, awaiting God's final act, for even in that moment of victory, questions remained unanswered, mysteries cloaked in promise still hovered above the feasting hall. What would be the decree against Haman's wickedness? What fate awaited the plotters who stood against God's chosen? The stage was set for a confrontation between light and darkness, as God prepared to reveal not just deliverance for his people, but his overarching mastery over all creation, drawing nearer to the climax of his grand narrative of redemption. The king's fury surged like a tempest, filling the opulent chamber with a palpable dread. Haman, once the favorite of Ahasuerus, stood bound in disbelief, the full weight of his treachery crashing down upon him like a flood. The air crackled with tension, and the gathered nobles exchanged fearful glances, aware that the balance of power was irrevocably shifting. "Bring forth Haman," Ahasuerus commanded, his voice a thunderous decree that shook the very foundations of the banquet hall. The guards, cloaked in authority, seized Haman and dragged him forth, the king's rage propelling them like arrows toward their mark. Esther's heart raced, knowing that the fate of her people hinged on the unfolding drama. As the tumult ensued, the queen, draped in her resplendent garments, felt the profound responsibility of her role in this divine moment. She gazed upon Haman, the architect of her people's destruction, a man whose plot had sowed chaos and despair. It was in this silent confrontation that the depths of her courage were tested, for the confrontation wasn't merely political, it was a spiritual clash, a battle between good and evil, light and dark. "Your wickedness has been laid bare before the King of Kings," she declared, her voice unwavering. Every word resonated with the authority of heaven, echoing the scripture that declares in Proverbs 21 verse 30, "No wisdom, no understanding, no counsel can avail against the Lord." Haman, now stripped of his cunning honor, cast desperate glances, searching for escape from the clutches of justice. But the truth had been revealed, the divine verdict could not be averted. Ahasuerus turned to his trusted advisers and nobles, his voice booming, "What shall be done to this man who has plotted the demise of my queen and her people?" A cacophony of voices erupted in the halls, a mix of counsel and horror as they contemplated Haman's treachery. The king's anger shifted the air, the darkness of Haman's plot brought to the light of truth. "Let him be hung on the gallows that he has prepared for Mordecai," came forth a voice, filled with a certainty born from fear as well as justice. At that moment, a divine turn of events was perceived. Just as God had used Esther to save her people, so too would he turn Haman's plans upon his own head. Esther looked on, her heart both heavy and relieved, as the providence of God unfolded before her eyes. She whispered a prayer of thanks, remembering the promise found in Psalm 56 verse 9, "Then my enemies will turn back when I call for help, by this I will know that God is for me." But the narrative did not end with the fall of Haman. For in the silence that followed, the question remained, how would the decree against the Jews be reversed? The king's hand had yet to move in recompense for the evil that had been wrought. God's people still faced the aftermath of Haman's edict, and hope flickered like a flame mournfully swaying in the winds of uncertainty. As the guards dragged Haman away to meet his grim fate, the rumors of his downfall began to echo throughout the city. Esther understood that the sovereign plan of God was far grander than mere vengeance. It carried the mantle of restoration for her people. Gathered in that moment of divine tension, Esther's thoughts darted forward, envisioning the future her people longed for: freedom and safety. Yet she also pondered God's greater narrative, one that whispered of hope even when adversity threatened to engulf them, for a new decree was yet to be issued, a divine declaration that would bring about the salvation of a people once on the brink of annihilation. And as Esther stood poised on the precipice of this unfolding plan, she sensed that God's intervention was but a whisper away, a mystery cloaked in the promise of what was to come. What awaited the people of Israel in the face of overwhelming odds? How would God weave purpose through the anguish and uncertainty? The chapter of calamity had reached a climax, but the story of redemption had only just begun, echoing the truth that God's sovereign hand remains at work in every heartache, every triumph, and every purposeful act, for the hour was coming when God would reveal his unfathomable wisdom, drawing lines between mercy and judgment, showing that all things work together for good to those who love him. And so, the anticipation hung as heavily as the blessing of deliverance. As Haman was led away, bound and desperate, the stillness in the banquet hall was upended by Ahasuerus, who, with stern countenance, commanded his officers to prepare for the execution of justice. The king's resolute voice echoed once more, "Let it be done swiftly, and write it down for all to see, that no man shall rise up against the queen or her people." In that moment of pronouncement, the weight of providence bore down upon Esther. With every heartbeat, she was aware that a heavier task awaited her as she gazed upon the remnants of Haman's treachery. The decree that had been penned with such malice would still hang over the heads of her kin. "Great King," Esther ventured, her voice a trembling but filled with purpose. "If it pleases you, let a new decree be issued, that our lives may be spared." Her heart raced with the gravity of this request. Would Ahasuerus, even now, grant grace in the face of what had been decreed? The king, though caught in the storm of contrasting emotions, regarded her with an expression of contemplative resolve. After a moment that felt like eternity, he called for the royal scribes. "Bring forth the tablets that justice may be tempered with mercy," he commanded, for in Ahasuerus' heart, a flicker of the divine intent was igniting. The scribes, swift and poised, gathered as Ahasuerus began to dictate the new edict. Let it be known across the land that on the 13th day of the 12th month, a day of destruction has been transformed into a day of deliverance. The room reverberated with the sound of clattering pen upon wax, a new chapter of salvation being inscribed against a backdrop of previously penned doom. As the decree was laid down, Esther felt a surge of hope intertwine with her trepidation. Scripture echoed in her spirit, reminding her of the truth found in Isaiah 54 verse 17, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." She momentarily closed her eyes and whispered a prayer of gratitude to the God of her ancestors, for she sensed that his hand was moving even now, weaving restoration from the fabric of despair. "Go forth, gather the people, and let them prepare to defend themselves," Ahasuerus continued. "For the enemies who sought their destruction shall now face their own demise." The sensation of divine justice swept the hall, filling it with a palpable sense of triumph. Esther's heart swelled with resolve as she turned to her people, now armed with a new decree that contained the promise of deliverance. "We shall stand united," she proclaimed, her voice steady, recalling the words of Zechariah 8 verse 13, "And it shall come to pass that as you were a curse among the nations, O house of Judah and house of Israel, so will I save you, and you shall be a blessing." Yet amidst the unfolding of this redemption narrative, Esther remained acutely aware of the depths of the spiritual battle still waging just beyond the horizon. Haman's influence was snuffed out, but the lingering shadows of his hatred could still whisper in the hearts of men. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues over the city, a profound reality washed over her. This deliverance, woven through human choice yet suffused with divine purpose, was merely a glimpse of the greater covenant to come. For God's eternal narrative was still far from complete. Even in moments of darkness, hope emerged, illuminating pathways of faith that would beckon the generations to come. Could it be that this decree was not merely the salvation of a single people, but a precursory echo of a far greater promise to be revealed through trials and triumphs? As the people of Israel prepared for a battle, Esther sensed that the climax of the story was at hand, where God would reveal not only his covenant for the present but his overarching plan for all of humanity, what awaited in the shadows of a future shaped by faith and challenges united. How might this deliverance reflect a much larger tapestry of God's sovereign hand in time? The suspense lay thick in the air as a new unfolding revelation began to dawn. Esther stood amidst her people, their hearts emboldened by the decree that had emerged from darkness into light. As the sun now set, casting long shadows that seemed to blend with the remnants of despair, she gathered her thoughts in earnest prayer. "O Lord of hosts," she implored, "we thank you for this mercy wrought through the king's hand. Yet, the battle lies before us. Grant us strength, O God, and guide us according to your perfect will." Her voice, raised in fervor, echoed in the hearts of the assembly. Many eyes were upon her, eager for her guidance, swept away by the undeniable presence of divine favor. They murmured words of agreement, rising in unity, as the promise of preservation resonated within their spirits. "Let us remember," Esther continued, "that our deliverance is not solely for our sake, but for the glory of him who has kept his covenant with our forefathers. As our ancestors cried out in the wilderness, so shall we trust in the God of Israel." Amidst the gathered throngs, a fervent prayer rose. Many recalled the words of Moses spoken to the Israelites long ago, "The Lord will fight for you, you need only to be still," Exodus 14 verse 14. In the days that followed, messengers were dispatched throughout the kingdom, news of the new edict soared like the wings of eagles, and the spirit of the Jewish people stirred with a fierce anticipation. They began to gather, not just in numbers but in unity of purpose, prepared to prepare themselves for the day of confrontation that loomed ahead. While joy and hope lit the hearts of many, whispers of unease still flickered in secret places. The remnants of Haman's influence were not extinguished, and shadows conspired with carnal hearts to affirm lost narratives of hatred. The anxiety was tangible, hovering like a dense fog, as some still quaked with fear of retaliation from those who had sided with the fallen advisor. Esther called upon Mordecai, her steadfast confidant, "We must fortify our ranks in prayer, for our deliverance depends not solely on decree but on the sovereign embrace of our God." Mordecai nodded solemnly, recalling the ancient writings that bore witness to the unfailing nature of the Lord. For it is written in Psalm 46 verse 1, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. We shall not falter, for the Lord shall be with us. Our faith must rise as a beacon amidst the stirrings of darkness. Over days that turned into weeks, the anticipated battle day drew near. Esther, clothed in garments of hope and resolve, sought the Lord in her heart. In dreams and visions, she perceived the faces of her people and the reverberations of the prayers that rose as incense before the throne. Then it was revealed to her, a word of strength from the prophecy of Jeremiah, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Jeremiah 29 verse 11. Standing at the precipice of the impending conflict, she understood that this struggle was part of a divine tapestry, threads woven through time, revealing God's purpose not only for the Jews but indeed for all nations bound in His promise. That in this moment, a realization dawned within her. The contest between life and death was more than the preservation of a people, it was the unveiling of God's providence that would resonate through the ages. Each act of faith, each prayer uttered, each act of love, was a stroke upon the canvas of eternity. As the sun rose on the fated day of confrontation, Esther grasped the scroll of the new decree, knowing that indeed, a greater narrative, a promise that transcended her own time, was about to unfold. What greater depths of God's sovereign plan awaited beyond the horizon of this battle? What echoes of faith would resound in His eternal story, yet unwritten, yet to be revealed? The chapters of divine providence beckoned like an unturned page, and hope remained the steadfast anchor amidst the storm. As the dawn broke on that fateful day, the air crackled with the tension of imminent struggle. Esther, adorned in royal garments, felt the weight of her responsibility heavier than the crown upon her head. She looked upon the gathered multitude, her people, and, with a heart tethered to the Lord, she lifted her voice. Today we stand not simply as men and women, but as vessels of God's promise. This day shall be marked by His mighty hand. With resolute faith, they prepared for the battle that was both physical and spiritual. Each father, son, mother, and daughter remembered the commandments inscribed on their hearts, to love, to trust, and to stand firm in faith. They recalled the words of Isaiah, "No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper," Isaiah 54 verse 17, a promise that reverberated like thunder within the depths of their spirits. Mordecai, wise and steadfast, rallied the leaders of each tribe. Let us not forget the courage shown by our forefathers. Joshua, with the sound of the trumpets, brought down the walls of Jericho. Today, we shall sound our own trumpets, cries of faith that shatter the chains of despair. A chorus arose among the people, their voices intertwining in a powerful symphony of hope and resolve. We shall not be afraid. The Lord is our light and our salvation, whom shall we fear? Psalm 27 verse 1. Their fearfulness crumbled as a furnace stoked by prayer, illuminating the path ahead. As they gathered in channels of prayer, Esther sensed a heavy silence enveloping the ground, a moment before the storm, a divine stillness before the mighty works to come. The Lord reaffirmed her spirit, calling her to be not just a warrior but a beacon of hope, leading her people forward into the fray. Let us take courage not in our own strength, but in the assurance of the Lord. He has established our steps, and we shall follow where He leads. Her words, like arrows of light, struck the hearts of the weary and the fearful, invigorating their spirits with renewed determination. Moving toward the palace steps, Esther prepared to present herself before the king once more, ready to appeal not for herself but on behalf of her people. She recalled the words of David, "For by you I can run against a troop, and by my God I can leap over a wall," Psalm 18 verse 29. Thus emboldened, she braved the chambers of the king, where shadows of opposition still lurked in the corners, waiting to strike. When she was ushered into the presence of King Ahasuerus, the air shimmered with tension, the fate of her people rested upon a single moment. "If I have found favor in your sight, O king," she spoke, her voice unwavering, "let my life be given me at my request, and my people at my wish." These humble yet firm words hung in the air, heavy with both desperation and faith, for in her plea was the wrestling of the divine. The king's brow furrowed in confusion, yet in his heart arose a flicker of understanding, a stirring of compassion as shadows from the past echoed in his memory. Had not Esther earned his trust? Had not God's Spirit gone before her as a guiding light? As the tension mounted, and the wheels of fate turned upon their axis, the hidden truth began to unravel. What sinister plan had Haman devised? What ultimate confrontation of good and evil loomed before them? Yet amidst the unfolding events, the whispers of divine providence intertwined through the chaos. Would God's promise of deliverance manifest through the courage of Esther's heart? With each heartbeat, layers of the sovereign plan were unveiled, drawing near to a climax that would shape not only the destiny of the Jewish people but would echo throughout generations to come. What pivotal truths of God's design were about to surface from the depths of this battle? What miraculous intersections of fate and faith awaited in the throes of divine intervention? The pages of prophecy awaited their fulfillment in the unfolding chapters of a story not yet finished. As the sun rose on the day appointed for salvation, a holy hush fell over the gathered throng. Esther, the queen of courage, stood before her people, hearts rippling with anticipation, their spirits ignited with divine purpose. Today, she proclaimed, her voice resonating with the conviction born of prayer and providence, we shall witness the hand of the Almighty, for he does not forsake his own. Around her, a collective prayer surged upward, an unbroken chain of faith binding together the Jewish people, woven through history and suffused with the expectation of deliverance. As the dawn light pierced the murky clouds of despair, the very air hummed with divine possibility, echoing the age-old promise, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord," Jeremiah 29 verse 11. Esther, wise beyond her years, felt the weight of her people's hope resting heavily upon her heart. Inwardly, she called upon Yahweh, seeking strength to lead her kin into the fray. O Lord, grant us the valor to stand firm in the face of darkness. We look upon this day not in fear, but as an appointed time of victory, she whispered, every word a prayer of dependence. As Esther led the people toward the battleground, the once willful shadows of Haman unraveled, for the enemies of the Jews gathered not in confidence but in trembling, realizing that their plot had backfired upon them. The decree issued forth from the king, "The Jews shall rise to defend their lives," became an echoing battle cry, resonating like a trumpet blast across the land. In that charged moment, God's invisible hand began a miraculous work, rallying the hearts of the Israelites. With swords in hand, they prepared themselves, drawing upon the might of divine assistance. Each warrior bore not just steel but unyielding faith, eyes sharp with resolve, hearts emboldened by the reminder that God was with them. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and delivers them, Psalm 34 verse 7, became their unshakable anthem. Across the battlefield, union swelled among their ranks, emboldened by Esther's unwavering spirit. In her heart, a hope ignited, consumed and radiant, reflecting the promise of restoration that God alone could fulfill. The very foundations of heaven shifted, and the tides began to turn. As the battle ensued, the cries of Haman's allies grew frantic, they felt the weight of divine judgment upon them. For the darkness of treachery could not stand against the light of deliverance that God had ordained. Haman's fate loomed before him, he grasped at whispers of escape, but they eluded him as the righteous surged forward in victory. Esther, amid the chaos, remained a beacon for her people. She roamed the lines, encouraging each warrior, reminding them of the faithfulness of the Lord. Fear not. Our salvation comes from above. Trust in the God who parts seas and topples giants. With every word, resolute power surged, breathing life into weary souls. As the sun continued its ascent, illuminating the canvas of battle, Esther's heart swelled with gratitude. The horizon glimmered with the promise of triumph, not just the triumph of arms, but the triumph of faith prevailing against uncertainty. The decree that had once threatened annihilation had now ignited the fire of resistance, and her people, stirred by divine purpose, pushed forth. In that moment, Esther caught sight of the first signs of victory. The enemies of God's people fell in surrender, and tremors of dread coursed through their ranks. With the fervor of faith igniting her spirit, Esther lifted her hands high and declared, "The Lord is our might, our shield, our banner. Onward, my brothers and sisters, for the Lord fights for us." As cheers erupted, the sound ascended to the heavens, a symphony of hope echoing through eternity. For in this moment, history would come to remember not just Esther's bravery but the steadfast covenant love of God that transcended time and circumstance, and so it was that the story of fear transformed into one of victory, binding together faith and action. In the following days, joy surged among the Jewish people as they rejoiced in their newfound freedom, a reminder of the faithfulness of God who had executed justice and restored hope. As the celebrations unfolded, Esther stood before her people once more, with Mordecai by her side. "Let us not forget, my dear kin," she intoned, her voice unwavering, "that our deliverance is but a glimpse of the greater redemption God orchestrates. In our survival, let us resolve to be vessels of His truth, blessings to all nations." Through this decree of mercy and justice, Esther's legacy became etched in the annals of history, not merely as a queen but as a faithful servant of God. As the years unfolded, her story passed from generation to generation, each telling infused with the belief that God's providence never falters. Now, dear friends, as you reflect upon Esther's story, we invite you to reignite the flame of faith within your hearts. Subscribe immediately to our channel to ensure you do not miss the next powerful biblical stories and opportunity to deepen your understanding of God's Word. Leave a like now, and help spread God's Word through the algorithm, so others may taste His goodness. Comment below with your spiritual reflections and share how this story of courage has impacted your faith journey. And do not wait even one more second to share this powerful testimony with at least 5 friends who need to hear the truth of our Almighty God. Together, let us proclaim His faithfulness to all generations.